Hello and welcome to our conversation about the travelling notebook. It is a conversation on connection. We are a virtual writing group. We have decided to come together and work together, and our conversation is going to be around how we did it, and we hope that it's useful for you who would like to do the same. There are 7 of us. We are a female group. We are South Asian writers, and amongst us we are authors, teachers, spoken word artists, playwrights, novel writers, flash fiction writers, and poets. For the first half of this conversation, we'll begin with a question and answer session, which we'll take in turns to ask and answer. And then the second half of this conversation will be readings. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to kick off. So I just want to go back to how we all met and what our story is for our writing group. Nazira?
Right, so it feels a long time now, but it was really only 2018, right at the beginning of 2018 that we met. So we all happened to apply for something called the Becoming a Writer course from the Asian Writer. It was an online course, 12 weeks, for people really that were writing, secret scribbling, whatever it was, but were just a bit uncertain about entering the world of writing and whether they could actually call themselves that. And so we were all on our different paths and arrived at this point where we applied for this course. I think there were sort of maybe 20 people in total, but I think we were probably the loudest on the forums and got to know each other a bit better. So in the end, when the course came to an end, we decided to continue staying in touch via a WhatsApp group, and that's really how our group began.
What I can add to that is that when I started this, what happened was when I met Vania, it was a year before this group started, and it was a very serendipitous meeting in that she was in the same town as me, and it was Leicester. I don't live in Leicester, and I was just living there for about a year and a half out of my life, and she was in the local library. And it was really surprising that I got this invitation on my WhatsApp from a person I knew in Leicester, where I was told that there was a writing group so close to me. It was literally 5 minutes in the car. And coming from somewhere where all my life I'd hoped one day to be a writer, but ended up being a teacher instead, I thought it was meant to be. So I went up there, and then what happened was the Becoming a Writer course came a year after that. Yeah, so it was just brilliant the way it happened. It just felt like it was meant to be.
I think there's something to follow on from what Nazira said about starting the WhatsApp group, which is we hadn't had a huge amount of contact through the course in terms of sharing our writing, because it was really individual. And so when we started the group and we started to share a little bit, initially I was really worried about my grammar on the group. I remember being really careful, and then obviously it descended into normality, but that was quite funny for a WhatsApp group.
Yeah, I think I remember having a conversation about that, where it was like, I need to really watch what I'm writing now in this group, because I'm on a group of writers. And I think because you were so open about it, it really helped, didn't it?
Anita, did you want to add anything about sort of where you were at when you joined Becoming a Writer?
I knew of Farhana Sheikh, and when I realised she did a kind of beginner writers course, that was what attracted me to it. And I think the way she set it up, where she did encourage us to talk to each other, I think that was really helpful. But I had been writing, but I felt kind of stuck. That was the nice thing about the WhatsApp group and the forums, is we all seem to be feeling stuck together. And it made me realise how normal that is, and how you kind of need to get used to that as when you're a writer, that it's going to be up and down. So yeah, I feel like we do. It was kind of half writing and half cheerleading for each other, which is where we've come together as a group.
Yeah, I think that moves nicely on to the next question, really, because we were in different places when we came onto the course. So just sort of you know, maybe we could talk a little bit more about the challenges we were facing at that time as writers, what was missing that the course gave us, and then connecting as a group gave us. Do you want to add a little bit more, Anita?
Yes. So I had been writing, I think, more than the rest of us had, from what I remember. So I'd had a few pieces published, but I don't come from a writing background. And actually, as I started to get published, I started to find out more about, you know, what the writing world was like, and become, I guess, even almost more unsure of what I was doing, and was I doing what I wanted to do. So when I joined the Becoming a Writer course, I guess that's actually, even though I'd been writing for maybe a couple of years and I'd had a few things published, I'd been shortlisted for the London Short Story Writers Award, the Spread the Word prize. By that point, I didn't feel like a writer. I felt very much like someone was going to come along and find me out, and so even though I had been writing, I think that course is where I actually started to feel like I was a writer, and that was the challenge for me, I think, is owning my writing, figuring out how I wanted to write, and that it was okay. I didn't have to write like other people. And that journey came for me after I'd been published, which was interesting. The imposter syndrome bit later. So I was really grateful for the group, because I think that's what I needed at that point. I knew I could write, but I lost a lot of confidence in what to do with it.
Sidra,
for me,
would
what
you
I
like to
found
add
was
anything?
that,
Yeah.
I just jumped in there. Yes, for me, what I found was that the accountability was fantastic, in the way that I had this really sort of euphoric, magical feeling during the course, and I wanted to prolong it, and I wanted to make sure I carried on doing what I told myself I would do. Doing the course and going through all the exercises made me feel that I was a writer, but I didn't want it to end there. And I think the WhatsApp group really helped me continue with the promises that I'd made to myself on how I was going to now show up as a writer. And I could see how, if I didn't keep in touch with these wonderful women who I met, I don't know if I would have been able to continue in that realm. It was almost like it would have seemed too good to be true to carry on and be as committed without someone to help and someone to sort of cheer me along. So I think that's what really helped. Like Anita said, the writer's journey is full of ups and downs, and now we know that feeling of not feeling worthy, it's quite a common feeling, and just to have each other there to say, this is okay, just carry on, just keep doing what you're doing, it's all right. It was literally life changing for me. So when I went through any, inevitable downs, I didn't feel that this was the end of the road. It was more like a sign to do something else. So yeah, that really, really helped.
Yeah, I think it's really similar for me as well. I think struggling to write, getting inspiration to write, getting the empathy when you do and when you don't write, that all came from this group, and that helped me to actually write more. It was always something I'd wanted to do, always something I thought I'd do, never something I made time to do. But from this group, that all came.
Brilliant.
How about
Okay.
yourself, Nazira?
Sorry?
How about yourself, Nazira?
Well, where I was at that point, I was such a secret scribbler. I wouldn't even admit to myself that I had dreams of being a writer, never mind anyone else. So, so actually to be in a place where I was then spending that time first, online through the course, and then in the WhatsApp group with other writers, starting to call myself one, and to be in a really safe space as well, like to be in a place where I knew I was emotionally safe with other people. Just as, a small group, people who understood as well, from the similar background. So we don't have everything in common, but we've got enough in common where we could say things and know that we don't have to explain ourselves and things like that. So yeah, it was a nice safe space where I could start kind of building that confidence, really, to be a writer, start sharing my work, you know, with the world and sending things out, and grow into the role.
It's an interesting thing, writing, isn't it? It's definitely the activity I do that people feel most entitled to comment on. Now, when I took up photography, no one went around going, why do you want to be a photographer? There's millions of them. You're never going to get anywhere with it. I just take my camera out with me and no one says anything. Or when I tried to teach myself crochet, you know, random aunties weren't phoning up going, oh, crochet, you know, we'll be in it. But since when I started writing, I had no expectation of being published. I just wanted to write. It was something I'd always wanted to do, and I stopped when I was a teenager because basically I didn't really have the encouragement to think there was any future in it, and it never occurred to me to write just for myself, which is another conversation about how long it took me to decide that it was okay to do things just for myself. And then when I started writing, people feel like they can say to you, but, you know, what are you know, are you writing a novel? Or if you're not writing a novel, what's the point of it? Or, you know, J.K. Rowling got rejected 20 times, so you just have to keep going. And it's like, I'm doing okay. I've got a notebook and I want to write in it. So, and
that takes us actually really nicely on to the next question, which is about the title of this event, the Travelling Notebook. So it must sound quite mysterious to quite a lot of people. So Nazira, I'd like to ask you to explain, what is the Travelling Notebook and where did the inspiration come from?
Oh, well, the mystery Travelling Notebook. Okay, so the Travelling Notebook is essentially it's like a virtual journal to which we all contribute, and it goes around the group in turn, with hence the traveling bit, and the idea came from my niece in Canada introduced me to the traveling, the sisterhood of the traveling pants, which is pants in the American Canadian sense of trousers. Or in that case, it's jeans. But it's a kind of, you know, young adult teen fiction / film series where this group of 4 friends discovers this magic pair of jeans that happens to fit all of them, and they sort of send this pair of jeans to each other, and magical things happen in their lives. So for some time, as we settled into group, we started, you know, we were all working individually, but we started talking about, you know, it'd be really great to do an anthology together, but we didn't really have an approach to it. And one day the words sort of came to me, sisterhood of the traveling notebook, you know, and this idea of this notebook that goes between each of us, and that's really where the format kind of came from. So it became a virtual notebook from the outset, because one of the things that we knew about each other at that point is we're all very busy women, lots going on in our lives. We do all this writing on top of day jobs and parenting and, you know, sistering and mothering, you know, all our different roles. And actually having a physical notebook, well, that would have been lovely. Actually sending a physical notebook around would have been adding another challenge, another thing to our to-do list. So rather, you know, having to kind of go to the post office and this and that and the other, it's like, okay, let's make it virtual. And send this notebook to each other, and each contribute something, and then we just move it along, and over time that would grow into a nice collection of work from which we could perhaps pull out an anthology. So that's really where the traveling notebook came from. That's how it works.
And Nazira, did you want to read the...
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes, we have a poem. I forgot. We have a poem. When we set up the notebook, I'm very nerdy, so I did a whole kind of put everyone's names on bits of paper and put it into a hat and pull it out to determine the order.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that's how you decided.
You know, so it was all fair and random and everything. But also I wrote a poem based on the rules for the notebook as well. So I'll just read that to give a sense of kind of how it works. So when the book arrives at your door, write what comes to you, be it fact or fiction or a mix of false and true. Write some lines or stanzas, a page or maybe two, in prose or verse or listicles, wherever best suits you. Dig up something old if you can't pen something new. And once your words are chosen, this is what to do. Write them in here with your initials so we know that they're from you. Then journey on and forward the book so it keeps traveling too. So essentially, yeah, that's the idea. Just everyone to create something, to put in something wherever they're at that point in their lives, and that way we just keep building and creating together.
I'll just add something to that. So with the notebook, as you just said, we can contribute anything. So it might be flash fiction, it might be a poem, it might be a kind of diary entry, or it might just be a download of something that's going on in our lives. But something I've been thinking about recently is it's a Word document that we then email the next person, and it travels around like that. And we could have made it a Google Doc. But I think the joy that we get of when it's our turn to receive it and reading the last 6 entries, it's just magical. And I think it's really nice to have done it the way that we've done it, rather than just a Google Doc where we could dip in any time. Eventually, I think it will probably turn into that once it's finished. I don't know if it will ever finish. What do you think?
I'm really glad you mentioned that, actually, Marla, because I think that is one of the things that makes it really special. You know, that moment where it arrives and you just get this treasure trove. It's a real treat to dive in and see what everyone's written, and then it sort of inspires as well, doesn't it? You know, you kind of maybe pick up a theme, you know, and or sort of respond to something that you've seen in there. I'd like to think that we keep going with it, you know, long term. And that we pull an anthology out of it, and perhaps that's something to talk about later on in the conversation, what we hope for the future.
Well, that's exactly the next question. It was really what are our ambitions for the notebook? If you've got anything else to add, Nazira, and then Sidra, if you want to follow up.
Well, I'll hand over to Sidra.
I think it was the idea of trying to get an anthology from it, wasn't it? And it would be amazing, like you said, to just continue. And then, you know, have a volume 1, volume 2, or, you know, label it with the years. I think what was amazing actually for us, which was a coincidence, is that it happened during the year of lockdown. So when we really got into it was lockdown, wasn't it? So it started just before that. And then and for me, like you said, when it came into my email, it really was a treat, and it was something to savor. So sitting down and just hearing your voices and reading your words, it really is something that you can't really put into words, ironically. So yeah, I mean, I think the fact that everyone was able to contribute and then accept whatever the contribution was massive, because I don't know about you, but sometimes a note would come in front of me and be like, my mind would go blank and think, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to do. But knowing that it was you, and it really helped knowing that it wasn't, you know, an editor or somebody professional on the other side. It was actually my friends who had already said that they accept me no matter what. And I could just, you know, I would kind of console myself with your words that you've already given me, saying that it's enough, I'm enough, it's okay, just do what you can, and knowing that it will be okay to put whatever I felt into it. That really helped carry on the tradition of it, and it really stopped that writer's block feeling of I can't do this, or that feeling of inadequacy. Yeah.
It's actually inspired me to write different styles as well, because I've read some of your entries and thought, wow, I love that. So, for example, a short story, or just like a random diary excerpt from somebody else, or it could be myself, things like that. It's been a really inspirational project, apart from sort of loving the, reading all of your entries. It's just made me think about my own writing and what I can do with it. And some of the writing that I read from looking at us, females, South Asians, I think some of the writing has actually been quite shocking and quite, because I know you. If I didn't know you, I wouldn't think that you would write something like that, or I would write something like that. So that's been really lovely to see, and it's made me think about how people perceive us and our writing and our names, and whether that would impact them wanting to pick up a book or not. And actually, it really shouldn't, because reading all of your writing is absolutely incredible, and maybe not necessarily what you'd expect from meeting someone. So never judge a book by its cover.
Definitely.
So I think that sort of kind of brings us back to really us as a group, and how we operate as a virtual group as well, because this is a conversation about connection, and the traveling notebook has given us something to work on, connect on collaboratively as a creative piece of work. But it's also about connection. The group's also about connection, really, with as friends and as writers in the broader sense, and creatives in the broader sense. And so my next question really is, I'll come to you first, Anita, but if everyone can sort of chip in about what you've learned from being part of a virtual writing group.
Yeah, so what we've gained the most is companionship and just solace in each other's company. I think the fact that what Anita was saying earlier about feeling the fact that she's now a writer, even though she'd already won a prize and she'd already been, recognized, she wasn't able to own that until she, got into the group, and kind of we were sort of cheering each other along. And we were able to sort of call each other writers. And I remember this really funny moment where we shared how we'd named each other on our phones, and it was like Nazira writer, Marla writer, Anita. There are 7 of us, so and it was like a really lovely little a screenshot of who we are to each other. If for everybody else, we have other titles, don't we? Like Nazira said, we're mothers, sisters, daughters. We have so many other labels: British, Asians, females, and like Marla said, the way we're seen, people perceive us in different ways. But for each other, we were writers, and that was the most important label that we gave to each other, which really helped us own that space. And I think that was massive for me, just to have a group who, they're my writer friends, and my sister, my family and my children got used to the fact that I have writer friends, which makes mum a writer. So it's like this part of me that I was able to, put into a compartmentalized. Yes, okay, I'm not always a writer in front of everyone who I meet, but for these particular people, I was able to get into that space. And I think I just love that, and I love the fact that I know it's the kind of group that I can expect support from now. You open the thing, and if something happens, this group of people will understand me in a way that a lot of people won't. There are so many aspects of being a writer. Like Anita said, other people tend to own what you're doing or own what you're writing. And as a British Asian, as a Muslim, there are expectations laid down on us on what they expect us to write. And people will actually be quite vocal about it and say, oh, I saw you wrote this, and how about writing that instead? And you just be like, what really has it got to do with you? It's my perception, it's my opinion. It doesn't make it the truth. But then it comes back to the fact that, the pen is very powerful. So if you have, you're able to write, and you're able to write something of truth or of value or of your opinion, it is going to affect people. And I guess that could be seen as a very positive thing, couldn't it? But
I think some really practical things that we've gained out of the group, as well as these sort of emotional support. There's been things like creating spreadsheets and sharing formats of how we track things, and there's been questions about, if we submit to this place, can we submit to that place, and understanding the rules around writing. And then sharing things on social media where, okay, this is open for entry, and we've all been really great with that, like posting to each other, oh, there's this poetry competition, do you guys want to enter? There's a story competition, do you guys? It's not keeping it to ourselves, we're just sharing and celebrating anybody that does get shortlisted or wins or anything like that. So I think that's what's opened my eyes up to some of the practical side of it. And you know, actually putting yourself out there, because for me personally, writing has actually been quite a personal thing. I've not really shared it much, and I've really been doing it for myself. There are ambitions to get it out there, but I've been, you know, questioning that sometimes. Do I really want to? It is actually so fulfilling in itself. I don't really need the gratification, and we know that there's not huge money in it for everybody. So writing is just, you know, fulfilling in itself.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think there's something loaded about being able to call yourself a writer. I certainly didn't do it until even though I'd had things published, I guess I felt if people questioned my writing credentials, I wouldn't know what to say. But since after we set up the virtual writing group, I felt much more confident about saying, you know, I'm also a writer as well as my other job. And I think there was something about that bit we did on the Becoming a Writer course where we thought about our dementors as well as our supporters. And when you think about the energy that gets sucked out of you from other things, the virtual writing group is always supportive. And like Marla said, there's a lot more to writing than just putting things on paper. There's absolutely, what do you do with it? Do you want to do anything with it? Some of us read, you know, we swap stories for feedback, and this is, I don't have to explain anything to anybody. I don't have to tell anyone what a Dokla is. They know. And yeah, I went through a phase where I put in italics all the Hindi words in my stories, and then I realized I don't have to do that. People can Google it. It doesn't matter if they don't know what a Dokla is. But I got a lot of that confidence from the group as well, because I realized it wasn't just me. We've got this shared identity, and I don't have to keep explaining it to people, because we are all quite different, and we have we come from lots of different cultures, but there are lots of things that are the same. And I got that out of the writing group as well.
Yeah. Nazira, do you want to add to that, and also the fact that we haven't said that we've actually named ourselves as well? Do you want to say who we are? The name of the group.
Was that a question for me? Sorry.
Yeah, it's just, did you want to add to what we've learned from being part of the group, and where we've taken it now more recently?
Well, yeah, for the longest time we were calling ourselves a busy writing group, because I think, was it Sidra when you set up the WhatsApp group, and we were just busy people, and we were trying to be busy with our writing, so we were just called the busy writing group, and only recently we actually sorted out a proper name for ourselves. So we are the Koyal Writers, and the Koyal being a bird that's common to the South Asian heritage, and comes up as a symbol in writing, South Asian writing and poetry and all sorts. So that's our name. We have formalized a little. We're on Twitter as a group. We're working on a website, and hopefully on sort of building from here and sharing what we've learned along the way, and sort of running more events and things like that. So we're quite excited, because this is our first formal event as a Koyal writing group. So we're hoping it's the first of many.
And Sidra did the beautiful logo.
Yes, brilliant job on the logo as well. Yeah.
Felt like we were a proper group once we had a logo.
Yeah, that was really nice. But I think what's great, and I suppose this is sort of keeping in mind people that might be quite isolated as writers, what, you know, being in a virtual group means that there are ways to connect with other people, with other writers. I think with Becoming a Writer, if we hadn't connected in that WhatsApp group, I probably would have sort of slinked away and written alone, because I think I found the writing landscape quite intimidating. And I found the idea of going and joining a group quite scary. But through that, and through these people that I was starting to get to know, I felt, okay, this is, I could take these steps. This isn't too bad. And I think there can be some real practical challenges to joining groups, or going along to writers' circles, or getting along to classes, and in the physical sense. And this is long before COVID came along that we joined up, but even then we would have said, the practical challenges were important consideration. So I suppose as you know, the lesson I've learned is that there are ways to connect with people. There's a lot to be got from it. There's a lot in terms of contributing to it. There's a lot of satisfaction from that, and it really enriches the writer experience to be part of something beyond sort of, you know, you and your notebook.
Yeah.
We've only got a couple of minutes left, so I think we should whiz through the next few questions pretty quickly.
Yeah, do the last one maybe, because we've sort of talked a lot about what we get from the group, I think.
Yeah.
So what have you gained from the group and how do you help each other?
Shall I? I've got something that's coming to
Sidra,
mind for me. It's the trophy idea. So that was, I think that was quite different in the way that we did encourage each other to submit entries for competitions and this and that. And when anything ever happened where we were really happy with the result, we would remind ourselves to get a little trophy for ourselves. And that for me was amazing, because even, I mean, we started cheering the fact that we'd submit to somewhere. It wasn't just the you know, it wasn't the outward result. It was always we always had a lot of encouragement to each other just to submit, to get our work out there. And it was always, like Marla said, it may not have always been the result that everybody wanted to have their work out there, but if it was something that we were able to really encourage each other to do, just by recognizing it, really. So that recognition really helped. And I think one of the main things for me as a, you know, British Asian female Muslim writer is that I would love for people to read our work and see our website and see what we're doing together and feel that they could also do the same. And it's not something that's out of their reach. I've met many women who want to be writers, they're aspiring writers, they don't really know what it means or what that takes, what kind of commitment it takes. But as Nazira said, you know, joining a group can be a little, you know, a baby step towards what you want to do. And just the fact that we've got each other, the companionship, that's really a massive win for me.
I think for me, what I've likened this group to is there's times when you want to write, there's times when you don't want to write, or you can or you can't. And we've been celebrating all of that, the ups and downs. And for me, it's just the unconditional support that has come out of the group of whatever moment you're going through or experiencing outside of writing and in writing. And I've likened it in my head to the unconditional love that you have for your children. It's the unconditional support that we get here, whether you can contribute, whether you can't, whether you need a bit of time, whether you don't, whether you've done something amazing and we want to celebrate it. We even celebrate the rejections. We're like, well, at least we submitted. Yeah. And hey, we got really great feedback, so we know what to do for next time. Or we didn't get feedback, but it doesn't matter, at least we submitted. So I think that's been really fantastic.
I think for me, it has been the understanding. That was something I didn't have, not coming from a writing background. And I think thinking of writing of something that, well, you know, if I wasn't going to, you know, publish War and Peace, then what was I doing about it? It's been really lovely to have that, to, you know, just be able to tell people what I'm going through. That's one of the benefits of it being virtual, I think, is that, you know, we're not scheduling Thursdays at 7 o'clock. There's somebody always there on the WhatsApp group if you're going, oh, you know, somebody said this, what does it mean? Or I don't know what to do with this story. Has anyone got any suggestions? So, and I don't have to explain. I always have to explain to everybody else. I've got lots of people who are supportive of writing and some people who aren't. But it's that we know what we're all talking about. That has been the thing I needed and didn't know I needed.
I think something nice to say here that might surprise people listening is that we all live in different areas, and some of us have met either individually or as a mini group, but the whole group has never met still, and it's 3 years and it will happen. We have all met on Zoom, but we haven't met in one place physically. I think obviously the pandemic has really affected that happening, but it's on our to-do list.
Watch this space, people. Definitely. Okay, so I think that's it for today. So thank you for joining us, and thank you to the South Asian Heritage Month people for you know, accepting our little little contribution, and we hope that you found it useful. And for now, we're going to leave you with our readings from the traveling notebook, so you'll get a little taster on what we've been writing so far. We hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, on behalf of the Koyal Writing Group, I'm going to be reading a poem which we all wrote individually and edited it together. And we're really proud that it's the first entry in our travelling notebook, and it's called On Being Writers, a Found Poem. 2010 to 2019, the decade the world turned upside down, with the West run by blonde buffoons and women still having to take men down. The decade too towards the end, when our lives turned inside out. By becoming writers. We are writers. Edit mountains of fiction, submit to competitions and journals, become known, whether slightly or well, become rich and give up the day job, follow the rules but know when to break them, have chronic imposter syndrome, work tirelessly just to stay afloat, and do not complain. Staying afloat is not a bad lot in life when so many drown. Yes, we are writers. We finished a book, a collection, many tales, a plethora of ideas on the backs of receipts, wrote hundreds of poems in more than one language, did the edit upon edit, the wait, became authors, playwrights, spoken word artists, more, built names, gained followers, became headliners, and we forgot how to rest, always had too much to do. Gave extra hours to writing, as well as the job, family, and other roles. Became exhausted at every level. Underproductive and inefficient in every area. Grew tired from all of that staying afloat. Went spinning. Still, grounded by the writers group, we built resilience. Had interesting, wonderful, creative moments. Felt warmth and beauty in strong friendships. Took up space. Faced rejections head on. We made big changes quietly, became different but truer. Every year we learn more about ourselves. Funny how we think we know it all by the time we're 20, but we know nothing, and even when we're 80, we will still be figuring it out. But we are writers. We will find our way. The next decade we will own. With #MeToo, equality has far yet to go. So we will do it for our daughters. We will cherish female friendships, support one another, take up more space confidently, worry less about being too much but still not enough, give up staying afloat and instead swim entire oceans. Our profound desire now is to carry on writing whatever else we decide to do, and with a new year, a new decade, new pages and new resolutions comes a new writing mantra. Read a lot and write as much as we can. 100 words a day, maybe less, perhaps more, like 3,000 in one sitting, after nothing for a year. We will finish the Nabeela, the novel, that pesky bit of flash, conquer that mountain of editing, sometime in this year or millennium. Yet also we will remember writing is an enriching part of life, but only one part among many, and not always the most important. We will write when, where and what we want to, and comply with no rules but our own. We will aim to achieve a balance between our jobs, our creative work and our personal lives. We will relearn how to let go of tension and pressure and relax. We will become productive and efficient again, and we will remember that first drafts are just about getting words on the page. As long as our worlds include some time to write, time with family and friends, and remembrance of our creator, the higher or the inner, we know we will find peace and happiness and plenty of joy. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jasat and I'll be reading Not Yet My Darling. St Saviour's Street connects to Broad Avenue with a gentle slope that at the corner turns into a punishing incline only 200 metres from my house. I stand up in my saddle, shift my gear down and ignore the car revving behind me. The key, I have learnt, is to take your mind away. So, I think about how I woke up 20 minutes earlier this morning to write one of the stories I'm working on, but my brother-in-law was in the bathroom, and while I waited, listening to my husband and daughter snore, I fell asleep again. I think about how it's a good thing that I've started wearing my running trainers to work, because all we do at work is run, except for when miraculously something goes right and then we're dancing instead. I think about how over dinner last night my daughter asked me if I was finished. "Not yet, my darling," I said to her. "Are you finished?" "Not yet, my darling," she replied, 1,000 times sweeter in her 2-year-old warble, and everyone laughed. The last 10 metres of the hill are the worst, but the most important. As well as it getting steeper, it curves, and there's a crossing island in the middle. Any cars coming behind me won't see me until they're right behind me, and if I start to wobble and hesitate, I could swerve. Again, I force myself to think of distractions to keep my mind away from my burning muscles. I run pop lyrics from the 90s, Britney Spears, Steps, the Spice Girls. I try to count backwards from 10 in Japanese, French, Spanish, and I repeat over and over again, the pain of discipline or the pain of failure, the pain of discipline or the pain of failure, the pain of discipline, or I reach the top and the hill levels out. I gasp out my breaths, falling back down in the saddle, all but slouched over the handlebars. The last part of my journey is a welcome downhill slide. My mind is addled with exercise hormones, and just as I approach the house, an idea for one of the stories I'm writing whispers in my ear. I iron out some of the details as I'm locking up my bike in the shed and sneak into the house, thinking I might be able to get to my laptop for 10 minutes and write it down. "Mummy, mummy, mummy!" My daughter's hearing would make her an excellent security guard. "You came home!" She runs at me, then pulls me towards her toys to show me that her babies are sleeping, she's cooking in her pretend kitchen, and can I come read her a story? The idea in my head flutters invitingly. "I won't stay for long," it seems to say. "When are you going to write?" "Not yet, my darling," I think, and I sit, pulling my daughter into my lap, and open the book.
Hi, my name is Nabeela Ahmed. I'm one of the Koyal Writers, and I'm going to share a piece from the Travelling Notebook. In this piece I wrote in memory of my grandparents, who were farmers from the hills of Kashmir, and this is some of the things that they would have done. I'm going to read it for you. And it says, "Miki yaad kare, remember me." It says, "Jila badya ai, char tatthe, kas chadya, Miki yaad kare." When monsoon comes, clouds fall, the stream flows, remember me. It jila baira ne diyo, sitte punyo, the khumma tadkinga, Miki yaad kare. When you clear the weeds from barley, roast the grains, hear the popping of corn, remember me. It jila tara chadya, the faslan rayo, tagre dandani jodi naal, Miki yaad kare. It said, when the new star tells you seasons have changed and you plough the fields with a hefty pair of bulls, remember me. And it says, "Jila har jet mure, the khoo sukki gaya, the pani ni khui par lagi badi, the Miki yaad kare." When summer returns, the well dries up, you have to take turns for water, remember me. Jila chan chadya, the samiya buttiyo, the kank pakki, jila Eid ai, Miki yaad kare. When the new moon appears, you turn dough into spaghetti, make a wheat chapati instead of barley. When Eid arrives, remember me. Jila chat joya, jila attatatha, jila badi rudi, Miki yaad kare. When the roof leaks, when the stone walls fall, when the field edge begins to slide, remember me. Jila gadi layo, jila name kade aaye, jila lung kapyo, jila palyar ditiyo, Miki yaad kare. When you store the hay into the shape of a house, when the potter drops off new pots, when you chop branches for the goats, when you add thorny barriers to crop, remember me. It jila toti kurte ala koi disya, jila mraje ki badiyo pagdi, jila shisha pitiyo kechu, te chalm nami lai, Miki yaad kare. When you see a man wearing toti kurta, when you fasten the pagdi on the groom, when you take shisha from a hookah, when you when you change the chilm, remember me. जिल्लै नंगियो पुल्लियां कवरां कोलूं ते ना भरन न होए घाऽ बिच्चूं जिल्लै टट्ठे वे कोठे तक्केओ ते हाब रुले वे लब्बे पैरां बिच मिगी याद करे. When you pass by forgotten graves whose names are hidden behind wild grass, when you see a fallen house and find broken dreams in its courtyard, remember me. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Nazira Vania and I am a My Writing Day-aholic. I love reading articles where authors talk about their writing days, and I sometimes fantasize about when I will be able to do the same in one of the big publications. But I also sometimes worry that my writing day won't measure up to the usual standards expected of authors, because the writers that feature in these types of articles tend to occupy a certain demographic and seem to have a certain lifestyle that doesn't quite match mine. Still, for what it's worth, here's a mock-up of what a feature on my writing day might look like. My writing day. For this week's column, we hear from Nazira Vania, author of future best-selling and award-winning novel, When You're Smiling. Writing is usually the first thing on my mind when I wake, but it isn't usually the first thing on the agenda, because rather than spilling out of bed and onto the page as Julia Cameron says one should, I first have to make a mad dash to the bathroom where a spilling out of a different kind takes place. I appreciate that this isn't the most pleasant of topics for your readers, so I will refrain from sharing further details, but some of your readers may well be relieved to hear that successful authors are human too, bodily functions and all. Moving along. Although writing is of great importance, God is the greater priority, and so the next half hour of the day is turned over to worship. I complete Fajr, the morning prayer, and then read a portion of the Quran. Together, these form the solid spiritual foundation of my day, and then it's time for the writing. Maybe. What happens next depends on the time of year. Fajr is prayed between the breaking of dawn and the sun fully rising. So as the seasons change, so too does the timing of the prayer window. In the summer, Fajr is performed as early as 2:30, but in the winter it can take place as late as 8 a.m. So whether or not writing takes place after prayer depends on how much sleep has preceded it. The earlier the prayer, the more likely I am to head back to bed, but the later the prayer, the more likely it is that pen will actually meet paper. Either way, the first writing act of the day, when it does eventually happen, is the completion of the morning pages. These are the 3 daily pages of stream of consciousness writing aimed at clearing the creative airwaves as prescribed by the aforementioned Julia Cameron in her book The Artist's Way. Occasionally, my pages will be creative and constructive, but most of the time they are a churn of the same old junk that circles my mind on repeat. So hence the nickname, the moaning pages or the groaning pages. But at least if that junk is out on the page, thus out of the way, then the real work can begin. Next, it's time to turn to the work in progress. Or not. Sometimes I'm hungry and head down for breakfast and end up wasting an unjustifiable amount of time on completing crosswords in my supermarket bought puzzle magazine. And sometimes the creak of my bones and ache in my muscles remind me that, really, I should prioritize activity over the sedentary task of producing written words. So, finally, after doing as little exercise as I can get away with, and going through the other morning rituals of showering, dressing, and so on, it's time to get down to the writing. Maybe, maybe not. Sometimes the folks need help with something. Sometimes the hugely neglected domestic duties refuse to be ignored any longer. Sometimes the son arrives for a chat about uni work or the latest football news or what's on the menu for dinner. And sometimes my own mental dial is set to super crap and I'm just not in the mood to write, full stop. Most days, however, I do eventually turn up at the page or the laptop, and then the writing begins in earnest. How long I stay there again depends on many things. There are further pauses for prayer. scattered throughout the day, phone calls that need answering, urgent issues that need tending to. But in dribs and drabs, in short blocks of an hour here or half an hour there, or a luxurious 3-hour stretch if things work out just so, I do get some writing done. I mostly get it done in my room, sitting at my desk in the designated office corner, or lounging on or in my bed in solitary peace or with the radio for company. But sometimes I get it done elsewhere, because, as with the saying about the mountain and the Prophet Muhammad, upon him be peace, if I can't stay with the writing as long as I would like to, then the writing stays with me. It often ends up coming into the kitchen with me, where I get a few more words written or edited at the dining table in the segments of downtime built into the drawn-out curry cooking process. Or it comes with me to the living room, where I get it done with my feet up in front of the television while semi-watching a football match with my son, or semi-watching an epic Turkish historical drama with my parents during our post-dinner family time, because I want and enjoy their company as much as they want and enjoy mine. There are days when things flow and I feel satisfied with my progress, and there are other days when nothing comes to me. Every word is the result of a slow and painful extraction process, and I just don't get very far at all. Sometimes I set a target for the day, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I achieve what I set out to achieve, sometimes I don't. And sometimes I add whatever I have accomplished to my to-do list at night, just so that I could tick it off and pretend that I achieved precisely what I set out to achieve that day. As you can see, my writing day isn't ideal. It isn't neat and tidy. It isn't particularly conducive to productivity, and it certainly isn't glamorous. But most people's lives aren't. Most writers' lives aren't. And what I have learned in the past few years of being a writer, as opposed to forever dreaming of being one, is that if you want a life of writing, you have to write in the midst of life. Shifting prayer schedules, curry babysitting duties, competing demands, inconveniently timed bowel movements, and all. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anita Goveas and I will be reading my flash fiction, The Object. It came in on the tide, ripple by ripple, impervious to wind or backwash. We'd never seen anything like it before. The crowd swelled slowly, in dribbles, staring and pointing. We murmured, but didn't shout, as if an invisible tide mark said, "This close, no further." Not because of danger, because of awe. A limited quality in troubled times. It was irresistible. It was untouchable. It was perfect. We enjoyed being overwhelmed, giving up control to a kind of forensic bewilderment, a distillation of all the confusion we dealt with daily. Now our quiet, insistent undertow of dissatisfaction had a focus. The object was inoculation, dispersing antibodies for fears and worries that we thought we'd experienced alone. Here was something we could agree on. We saw its innocence, its sensuousness, its corruption, its stability, its persistence, its flexibility, its inconstancy, but somehow it stayed the same in the prism of our observations. We knew we couldn't hold it, but we could gaze on it. It was only held by the currents. It was substantial as spume, as fixable as foam. The sea would swallow it up and it wouldn't come back. We knew that it was the last one, that we would never see it again, that we had to grasp it now, that action was necessary. We surged towards it, but it slipped away. Ripple by ripple, we watched it recede. We never saw it again.
Hello, I am Sujana, a poet and playwright. The title of my poem is called Foxes and Bears, and it's dedicated to my grandmothers. Foxes and bears snuck out of Amma's meandering tails and canoed down the rivulets sprouting from the nape of her neck. My sister and I, we combed and braided until a deep, gurgling river flowed. When Amma gleefully dived in, we emptied our pockets, held our breath like she taught us, and followed. Between us, my sister and I, we understood. Only Amma gleamed like gold, walked proud despite her stoop, because only she was loved as we thought a woman should. Returning with pockets full of stolen kisses, we first checked how we felt on our scalps, only then lifted words to look over and under, to listen to each other's heart. The day they broke Amma's glass bangles, wiped sindoor off her head, we climbed up treetops and trees, watched Lovey Road, memories wash away. We waited for her to shrivel. Instead, not long after, found her fishing by her lake, our children, foxes and bears in tow. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Marla Schneider and I'm delighted to be one of the Koyal Writers. I'm going to be reading something from our travelling notebook, which coincidentally happened to go around between us during the pandemic. And I think that was quite a major source of inspiration for some of our writing, and certainly for this poem. It's called Missed, Lost, Cancelled. Prison visits from family, keeping inmates sane, visiting grandpa through the window pane, not holding their hand when they died, no one to hold yours at their funeral or any time, cancelled parties, everyone's, same for sports days, someone's last Olympics, life's training gone to waste. Community services rarely allowed, can't pray for comfort together during lockdown. Charitable giving on the rise, donating to food banks re-energised. Beautiful babies born, missed family huddles, fearing that loved ones could die from a cuddle. Health services curtailed, like cancer treatments, can't get appointments, even if it's urgent. The arts decimated, events and concerts postponed, a distant memory, weddings forever on hold. Some suffered depression, lost, while others found time for creativity and healthier lifestyles. Teachers are key workers like doctors and nurses, but the former not important enough to be first inoculated. Technology soared, so did broadband bills. School kids became experts on their Teams and Zoom skills. Nature has spoken, we needed to show more respect. The climate's improved, a global positive effect. Science has answered faster than ever before. The world's best worked together for a preventative cure. This time next year, we'll be writing a different verse of how we overcame the unthinkable adverse. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sidra Ansari, and this piece is called Writing to My Heart's Content. For me, this encompasses everything that I feel about the travelling notebook, and it is a response to a poem I wrote earlier about wanting to move to Wales. Writing to my heart's content. The travelling notebook has come my way, and there is so much I want to say. I feel so blessed to have you ladies by my side, to be able to grieve and cry with a group whose concern is wide. To benefit from the highs and woes of creative minds, I'd like to thank these fabulous women who give up their time to boost each other and write words sublime, and to validate my virgin words of rhythm and rhyme. And now to the topic of Wales. My, oh my, that ship has sailed. Even though our house is now sold, the borders of Wales have now been closed. And even if we wanted to, we can't go over to hear and moo. or a bear, or even a tweet. We must stay put and admit defeat. Surprisingly, it's turned out well. The whole story will make your heart swell. Through the narrative, I'd love for you to stay with me. Together we can build a writer's family tree. Now I'm worried my poem has become lame. I hope the ladies accept it and don't try to tame this muse who is out of control. It's reckless, convinced the story needs to be told. So, the house is sold. Hubby is still undecided. Maybe he doesn't want to be bold and move so far from family and friends. He feels maybe our support system it would end. Maybe he doesn't feel like taking a leap of faith. Maybe he feels it was a decision of haste, not made with consideration or even deliberation. A big change for the kids. Our expectation too high with no lid. We'd only have ourselves to blame. When our pie in the sky we'd have to reclaim. Anyway, before we had a chance to make a decision firm, lockdown was announced and our estate agents confirmed that we must sit tight and wait. We wouldn't be going anywhere, said the decision of late. To the rules we had to abide. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. We had to submit to the will of the one. Yes, I once said that the house was too tight. I mentioned needing space, said nothing felt right. But lo and behold, a lesson from my Lord. The change forced me to see how it could be done. We managed to get into a rhythm and even have some fun. I now meet each day with a new vigor. The smile on my face is growing bigger and bigger. Without the pressure of the school run and my job, I have time to break bread and even cook on an outdoor hob. The children are now blossoming under our roof, our care and love. This lockdown has become a gift from above. It's a huge reminder that nothing lasts forever. Slow down, reflect, nothing too clever. A reminder to sit with each other and pray, and to be aware of God each day. You see, with my desire to move to Wales to relieve my sadness, I'd forgotten that if I simply slowed down, my life could be full of gladness. The older children whom I'd once thought to be beyond repair, who spent too much time on the screen and didn't seem to care, they've changed. Don't get me wrong, nothing is perfect. Problems don't disappear when you have time to worship. It is what it is, and we're here for them all. But I'm no longer worried that they're going to fall. Another silver lining is Ramadan. Usually a month of logistically impossible feats, this year is very unique, a time of worship, reflection and piety, a time which we will be rewarded for, promises the Almighty. What a blessing, what a time to reflect. This Ramadan has been like no other yet. An answered prayer, a place for mum to write I once wished for. Teaching from home has given me that and a lot more. Writing to my heart's content and building a home with love and cement. Wherever we end up, whatever that will be, I'm happy to report I've found 2 things that will ground me for eternity. Thank you.